some reaction. Busisiwe Mavuso, Officer of Business Leadership South Africa, joins us to expand the conversation. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, the budget, we've heard so much throughout the course of the day. It's been widely criticized as a missed opportunity to address South Africa's pressing economic challenges. What's your take?
Good evening, and thank you very much for inviting us. So I really think that the minister did a decent job, in spite of a very difficult situation that he actually found himself in, because really there's very little fiscal room to maneuver, whether from an expenditure perspective and from a revenue perspective. But I really think that it did a commendable job in presenting a budget that really was balanced and still maintained fiscal consolidation, and I really thought that it was important that he was giving huge emphasis on the need to grow the economy, because I think he also acknowledged, that the reason why we find ourselves in this difficult position is precisely because our economy has not been growing. Our GDP growth has averaged 2% in nominal terms for the past 10 years, while population growth has been growing at about 1.6%. And when you look at the 2% economic growth in nominal terms, you must know that the real economic growth has been 1%. So if you have economy growing at 1% and you have the population growing at 1.6%, you can see that we've been becoming poorer as an economy and as a people and as a society for the past 10 years. Because 1% economic growth only enables you to generate 130,000 jobs. That's it. And yet you're sitting with a situation in South Africa where you have 1 million young people who enter the labor market each year. So you can see that that actually doesn't balance. So the focus, therefore, on economic growth, the focus on reforms, the focus on investment was precisely the right focus, because that is the only way in which you grow the economy. And it goes on to say that the strategy to grow the economy is going to be anchored on the 4 pillars of maintaining macroeconomic stability, of implementing structural reforms, of improving state capability, and of accelerating infrastructure investment. And I think
another tier, pardon me, as you speak about ways of growing the economy, the strategies that come with it, when it comes to the much needed support for small businesses, which is a key driver for job creation as well as the economy, did you get a sense that there was concrete support to help these small businesses scale?
Reforms help small businesses. Infrastructure investment helps small businesses. Improving state capability helps small businesses, because think about it. The main structural reform that we've been focusing on for a while as a country is energy security. Think about how many small businesses have actually had to shut their doors, because unlike large corporates who can afford to buy big generators and buy diesel on a daily basis when we were in blackouts during 2022, 2023, small businesses could not afford that. They actually had to shut down. Jobs were lost. So if you therefore focus on implementing structural reforms, he's now talking about focusing on transport and logistics. We know Transnet is a disaster. So if these small businesses are going to be producing goods that they can't get out to their clients, to markets, because Transnet is failing, you can see that, it actually doesn't help if we're actually not going to be implementing structural reforms. He therefore also speaks about infrastructure investment. And the infrastructure investment, remember, he spoke about R1 trillion budgeted expenditure for public infrastructure over the next 3 years. And what is this R1 trillion going to be on? It is going to be on network industries. There are 4 network industries in this country. It is energy, it is transport and logistics, it is water, it is telecoms. The 3 have been dysfunctional for more than 10 years in this country. The only one that has been functioning as it should has been telecoms. So taking R1 trillion and saying we are going to spend it on energy, we're going to spend it on transport and logistics, we are going to spend it on water is precisely the right focus, because whether you are a big business or a small business, and irrespective of which sector you operate in, you need energy. You need to be able to get your goods to market. You need water infrastructure, which is the current crisis that we're actually facing. So I really think that these 4 pillars, and this strategy of saying that we are going to implement reforms, we are going to focus on infrastructure, expenditure, and we are actually going to ensure that we have a capable state. And I mean, I don't have to talk about a capable state. We know, that is where the rubber hits the road. Mm-hmm. Service delivery has been appalling in this country, and therefore all of those are actually the right focus to help all of us, business and broader society.
Yeah, I mean, as you talk about that, just going through some of the criticism, one critic was saying that more than 380 billion rand has been allocated to debt servicing, yet we didn't hear much about creating sustainable jobs for youth. That was just getting a sense of what about the young people in South Africa? What happens to them?
And I think this is what we're going to have to understand, because remember, how do you create jobs? Jobs are a function of demand and supply. You and I have been talking about now, the fact that so many businesses have closed because we have failed to focus on the right things. We have failed to focus on the basics. And I think that has been the tragedy in South Africa, that we have been getting the basics wrong. The basics of having a capable state, the basics of having, a local government and a municipality that does its job, the basics of not having water coming out of our taps, the basis of not having electricity when we need it. So you can't therefore talk about jobs if you're actually sitting in that environment, because the structural reforms are where this supply chain of creating jobs start. You need to put reforms in place. By putting reforms in place, energy being an example, you now have energy security. It improves the trading environment within which business operates. Mm-hmm. If the trading environment is improved, business confidence goes up. If business confidence goes up, investment comes in. If investment comes in, the economy starts to grow at the right levels, not this 1%, that 1% that is only going to give us 130,000 jobs. It grows up it grows at decent levels. And only when the economy is growing at decent levels, you can therefore create jobs. Because as I'm saying, jobs are a function of demand and supply. Yeah. And you are not going to be able to deal with the issue of youth unemployment if the number one step in that value chain of creating jobs, which is the reform agenda, is not being taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time and weighing in on this topic, of course, expanding and getting reaction to the budget speech. Busisiwe Mavuso, Chief Operations Officer of Business Leadership South Africa.